You are listening to Happy Jack's RPG Podcast. Pursuing the RPG hobby with reckless abandon.
Why, hello, and welcome to season 27, episode 12.
Episode 12?
I think. Okay, if that's right, I should have gone to the webpage and looked at what the last episode was. Anyway, of Happy Jack's RPG Podcast, my name is Stu.
I'm Stork.
And I'm Kurt.
27 seasons?
Yeah.
Because he does about 2.5 seasons a year, so it accelerates.
Yeah,
well, yeah,
that's
that's true.
Working? What is
Don't
a
ask.
season?
Don't ask.
It's 20 episodes. A season is 20 episodes.
Okay.
Except early on, it was like, it could have been any number. In the earliest seasons, it's like, oh, it might be 9. Okay, yeah, this is season 12, yeah. In this episode of Happy Jack's RPG Podcast, Steven SoCal writes in about red herrings. Scott writes in about levels of commitments to gaming, and Erica Odd sends a bittersweet email. If you'd like to email us, you can email us at happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. That's happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. We're in all of the social meteors. HappyJacksRPG, all one word. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, MeWe. We also have a live stream, which we do on Friday nights at 7:07 p.m. Pacific time at happyjacks.org/live. That's happyjacks.org/live. I wanted to mention, because a flurry of books have been coming out, and it will be coming out. I don't know if you guys know, but have either of you read the Bobaverse books?
Never even heard of him.
Okay.
I know Bob O'Reilly by The Who.
I do know that one.
The Bobaverse series, the first book is called We Are Many, We Are Bob. And I'm going to spoil the first 2 or 3 chapters of the book. This guy, he owns he's a software engineer. He owns some kind of .com company that he sells for millions and millions of dollars. He decides to go and splurge, and he goes and pays a company so that, like, if he falls ill or dies, they'll cryogenically freeze his head, right? And he's in Vegas, so he goes ahead and signs up for that. Then he goes to a party with all of his former employees, and they're all happy because they've all got stock options and shit. So they have a big party, and he gets a little tipsy. He goes out, he walks out into the middle of the street, gets hit by a car, and dies. He wakes up a couple hundred years later in an entirely different world. Except they never quite figured out how to recreate human brains, so they took his consciousness and put it inside of a computer. So he's now sort of like an AI.
Open the pod bay doors, please, Bob.
Right. And then...
I'm sorry, I can't do that.
Except it's still him. It's still him. It's still his personality. And then he later discovers, and this is all probably within the first 6 or 7 chapters, because this is sort of the premise, which is why I'm spoiling this part of it. He then discovers that the whole plan is to put him inside a von Neumann machine, which is a spacecraft that is slower than light, that can replicate itself. And he will have the ability, the whole machine is built so it has like 3D printers, so you can print a new like motherboard, or they call it a matrix, that you actually put the whatever programming made the AI personality in, and it can also make everything else on the ship. So it can literally make copies of itself, including the ability of the copy to make copies later. So it's a self-replicating machine that is being used to basically explore space because there's no faster than light travel.
Right.
And it doesn't sound like an engaging premise for a series of books, but everyone I have recommended it to has loved it.
How many books are there?
It was originally a trilogy, and he just a week ago came out with the 4th book. Because I think he was going to be done with it when he wrote the trilogy. And it kind of wraps up.
I'm so glad you didn't say, well, I don't know, he's just self-replicating. He started with 2, and now I've got 4, now I've got 7.
No, that would be the book that my wife is reading.
But it was if you're a Bobaverse fan, I enjoyed it. It's different because one of the things that happens is as he starts replicating, the story sort of bounces around. It's all written first person, but it bounces around between different copies of Bob. And for the sanity, probably the sanity of the reader, each time a new Bob is made, they kind of realize they're not the original, so they give themselves a new name.
Okay.
But it's they're saying that, Kurt, you're a little soft.
I'm a little.
Can you
Wow,
turn?
Nobody's ever told me that in my life.
Right, braggart. Can you turn the volume up just a little bit?
Yeah, I think I can do that. Only a little. That's as much as it goes.
That's better, I think.
Okay.
So anyway, that's out, and I enjoyed it. But and then also, of course, the newest Dresden Files book came out. So.
Oh, did it come out?
Yeah, it came out the 30th, I think.
I never made it on any of my feeds. I missed it when it dropped. I saw it was gonna come out, but
And it comes out in November, right? I don't know if you guys read Ready Player One, but Ready Player Two comes out in November.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one actually.
So.
Well, I guess I'll get Dresden and read that this weekend.
Seeing as how I haven't read any of the Dresden books, I won't be reading this one.
Probably not a good time to start. Yeah.
No, probably not. I realize that makes me something of an anathema in geek world, but
he wrote another series, which I actually really liked, and it might be sacrilegious, but I think they're better written, I think, than Dresden as well.
Mary's got 3 or 4 of another series written by him that was basically based off of a prompt that he got at a convention, I think.
Yeah, I think Tyler mentioned it. He said he basically wrote about Pokemon. I think
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
Oh, the
Codex
Codex Alera series.
Yeah.
I have not read those.
They're good.
Are they
They're
really?
good.
Okay. Well, my plate is so full right now with new books.
And he wrote one for the starting of another series, which is sort of like ships in space kind of thing.
The windless something.
Right.
Yeah.
And they came out like 3 or 4, maybe even 5 years ago, and I haven't. Maybe he lost interest and hasn't followed up. I don't know.
Well, he probably. I'm sure he's sick and tired of writing Dresden novels, because he's like up to 18 or something.
Right,
now.
But he's probably contractually obligated at some point. But he is a fairly prolific writer. I don't know. Maybe he's just burned out or.
No, I haven't finished it. I just barely started, but it might be the last book. I don't know. I'll know when I finish it. Maybe. Who knows?
The stream apparently went something crazy.
Oh, let me check.
It's a black screen with about 14 million cursors blinking on it.
Is it back? Oh, that's because I had to open the. Hold on a second. Yeah, I'm.
Okay, that's better.
That fix it? Maybe, at least for a while? Okay. All right. Let's go on to books. I wrote 2 books.
Yes, you did. I started listening to the first one.
Excellent.
And I am actually very pleased that there is an audiobook version of it, because I would not have known how to pronounce the main character's name.
Mandate?
I would have pronounced it Mandate.
That'd be fine. I don't care. You can pronounce it any way you want.
And you have a mandate to do this.
Right. Now, the first book, I recorded the audio version of it, and it's been submitted to Audible. And they told me it'd be 30 days, which ended 2 days ago. And now they're saying, well, it's really 30 working days, which I'd have to just subtract like 8 days from that. But they said, but we're really behind right now. So they said maybe like mid-October, maybe late October. But if you're on the Patreon, you got it for free. So.
Hey, they make good Christmas gifts.
And they do. And then the second book, I'm recording the audio for the second book, which is Mandate, the Patented Mage. And that I'm recording the audiobook for right now. And then the third book it's at a proofreader right now. I made just enough to be able to spend all of it on a proofreader. So it's sitting at a professional proofreader right now.
Yeah,
hopefully.
They still can't see anything. It's still that black screen.
Really? That's strange.
I don't know if they can hear anything.
Oh, you know what it is? It's probably better now. Let me see if because Kimmy wanted to jump in. That's why I've got that thing open.
Yeah, it's better now. Just last time you fixed it, no. You fixed it, and then it went, and then you fixed it again, and then, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to close the invite window until she shows up. So that should fix it.
There you go.
All right. Okay, I'm going to go on to the first email because it's 15 minutes in. All right. Red Herrings from Steve in SoCal. Happiest of Jackers and Jillers. I hope that your email backlog is long enough that a worldwide pandemic is no longer on your minds by the time you read this. Ha! Now, he wrote this probably in July, so even more optimistic he was there, Steven, in SoCal. If it still is, then please shake your fist at the heavens for me.
Fist in the sky, down to the ground.
Fist in the sky, down to the ground. Is that Will Wood?
Yes,
I
it
think
was.
so, yeah.
Yes.
Look, a notification just came up.
Man who's
Kimmy's coming in.
The man who played Sir Francis Drake since Sir Francis Drake retired.
All right. Here comes Kimmy. Hi, Kimmy. Oh, I should probably send you the emails real quick. Nah. You want to not read one? You want to just... I'll send it to you just to follow along.
Why is my thing being weird? Oh.
Your mic's a little quiet.
Oh. Well, I'll just be louder.
There you go. Perfect.
I have a baby sleeping. It'll work out great. Why is it doing that? Don't do that.
Okay, I just shared the Google Docs.
Okay.
Google Docs.
Wait, let me see. What am I going to have for my background?
How you been?
I'm gonna continue reading because we are live.
All right.
Oh!
We're on right now.
Dude, you should have told me that! I'm so sorry, everyone.
I'm sure they're just happy to see you and hear you.
All right. So if it still is going on, the pandemic, please shake your fist to the heavens for me. I was musing through various gaming stores and was pondering your thoughts on when you think one should yes and the player's pursuit of red herrings and turn them into totally planned, quote unquote, plot devices. For example, when does that throwaway article on the bear attack in the woods just happen to be a Nazi plot to mutate local animals? And it just so happens that Project Uber-Ursine is also run out of a secret Zeppelin hangar in the forest where the intended plot centers.
Okay, I give this guy high marks because that's exactly what we were thinking, and it is like the first, like it was like the first Savage Worlds game we played, and this is where you came up with the whole yes and thing. This is like the genesis of this whole idea. It was perfect.
He just had column inches to fill. And
I did. Alternately, when you do just shake your head and tell them they just wasted an afternoon and almost died combating local fauna.
Which is how that Uber-Ursine actually played out.
Right. Well, I have some things to say in my defense on this.
I know. No, I know.
I suppose there's also a middle way where that bear turns out to not be part of the intended main plot, but is still a shape-shifted elderly bar owner mage who can still be a useful plot element on her own. Hopefully that last bit came across as clever and not just a jumbled mess of compound sentences. I sometimes struggle with the feeling that things are too easy for players and thus unsatisfying, but at the same time, have often experienced frustration as a player when all our ideas seemingly lead nowhere. Also, it seems like anything you bother to include should have the potential for significance. Well, I had extra column inches.
Chekhov's gun.
Right. Should have a potential for significance. And I actually, in hindsight, now, 10 years later, I agree with that. Otherwise, why waste precious spotlight time on it? It was just a little tiny article.
It wasn't
a spotlight. It was barely a Fresnel.
Completely. I had a whole plot.
Just to amuse you with a random anecdote along these lines from one of my gaming groups. A prior DM had the PCs so paranoid about everything that even a brief description of a random cow mooing in the field turned into a serious discussion about how it might be some kind of shape-shifted enemy or a trap of some sort, instead of simply a simple piece of background material intended to make the world seem more real. Thanks for all the wisdom and humor over the years, Stephen SoCal, the Grimace on the forums.
Wow, Grimace, thanks for taking us back. Wow, it's a long-time listener. That's pretty awesome. Yeah.
Indeed.
I
Yeah, of course the bear was intact. In fact, in that
Right.
plot.
see the
Of
thing
course
is,
it was.
it was okay. That game was a one shot. If it had been a campaign, I might have let things kind of. Well, the game ended and you guys killed the bear.
Well,
Shut
and
the shit out of that bear.
it was a lot. Yeah, it was.
And you had and you literally had no idea of the rest of the plot because
No.
you happened to pick the one article
Right.
in the thing
It was just for filler.
that was the people campers got mauled by a bear, rather than what I don't even know. I don't even remember. All I know is there was Nazis and an underground Zeppelin hangar and.
And I think I was in there with Bruce and Casey. I think it was like our first Savage Worlds game, so we were really more into like.
It was the
let's
first
attack
time.
something and see how the combat works,
Right,
because
it-
that's where Bruce and Casey do.
And
So
it
was like, let's get the bear. We can shoot something, and we can happen immediately. So there was a lot going on.
Yeah.
Yes. But you know what? It's one of those situations like sometimes when you're under pressure, it's like, oh no, of course I'll just do this and beep, 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 and now that's where things are going. But that doesn't happen to me every time. It might to some, but sometimes it's just like,
I hear it happens to men of a certain age occasionally.
But I was like, it's one of those situations like I really can't think of I'll just let them kill the bear. And that'll be the game, I guess.
But we all learned a lot from that. I mean,
Yes.
first of all, it's
And it was
become-
kind of a play test of the system too.
It was, and you've now learned a lot about, like, if I ever make props, make sure I have a story for everything.
No, because later,
Just willing to roll with it.
He has not learned that lesson.
when we did
No.
the original
vampire
motive,
games.
the original Mode of Sin game, I again had extra space on my fucking newspaper, and at the bottom, so I made, you know what, I'm going to make a couple ads for a couple local businesses, and I made one for,
Bar.
well, there was one for something else, like a Verst Shack or something. I don't even remember what it was, but the other one was was a bar, and they're like, there's a bar in this.
Not they. One person.
Oh yeah, it was.
Tim
It was
laughed,
Tim,
so
it was
like
Tim.
a hyena on a bone.
It was this little old lady. That's why we thought it
Yeah.
was weird, because she was quoted in one of the stories, and it was like she's like this elderly woman who owns a bar in like this super resort town. You're like, this is a little odd. I don't
And
know.
he convinced himself that she was older than. It's like he started reading this article, and the next thing you know, his brain took off with it. She can't be this old. Do you think she's this old? She must be immortal. There's something going on. And the next thing you know, he's driving to the bar. We're all like, what the fuck just happened?
See,
Ooh.
and in that situation, I had nothing planned for that at all. I've mentioned this before many, many times. She was just an old lady who owned a bar, because there are old ladies out there who own bars.
Yeah.
They do exist.
I'm gonna say though that like she ended up being one of the most amazing epic characters ever.
Right.
So I feel like that was a win-win situation for everybody involved.
And I think the reason that I felt okay doing that was because it was a campaign, and it was like the first session.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna make her something really dangerous, because who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows where this is gonna end up?
But had we not
Doilies
gone
and
and killed the bear, you would not have been pre-warned and pre-armed with the expertise to pivot
Maybe.
like that when your journalistic skills have been misconstrued.
That could be. So what do you guys think about his sort of main question about whether should you let the players dangle on red herrings, or what are your feelings on that?
Having chased red herrings before that actually lead to nothing, not just the bear, that was fine. Like you said, it was a one shot. But I've spent entire like 2 or 3 game sessions chasing something that didn't come up with anything, and it's really frustrating. At some point, I either want the DM to like wave a sign going, guys, this isn't going anywhere, or have them turn it into something, or at least lead to something else. I hate just letting your players twist in the wind for no reason. You know, it's not their fault they chased your red herring, and they shouldn't be punished for it. You threw the red herring in there. At some point, you got to make it relevant. Otherwise, you're just being a dick.
Yeah, I gotta agree there. It's like I mentioned earlier. It's Chekhov's gun. If you introduce a gun in Act 1, you have to use it. It has to be fired in Act 3. I mean, there has to be a reason for it. And if there isn't one to begin with, then either make it apparent very quickly that there's no there, or that's when you end your session some way and spend the next week figuring out what that could lead to. And if in a week or whatever your interstitial time is between games, if you can't figure out something, like anything, then you come back at the beginning of the next session, and they pick up and they figured out where they're going, and you just bring it to an end then. And so they still haven't, I don't want to use the term, but wasted time, because they will think of it as wasted time.
Oh, I think it absolutely can be wasted time. I mean, I've gotten to the point now where I don't have red herrings, like actual red herrings. I mean, that was the lady at the bar is not a red herring. I'm sorry.
No, it's not a red herring. It's not at all.
The bear, yeah, people died.
It's that we became obsessed with.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. I fall into the trap of trying to make an immersive world by describing a lot of little details here and there, and usually my players know me well enough, as you guys know me well enough, that this is just Kurt talking to hear his own voice, so there's nothing really to follow along those lines. But I'm trying to create this immersive environment with only a verbal description. But if they pick up on something, I better either finish it within the next 15 minutes or be able to develop that into something huge. Just because that's if that's the part of the world that they choose to sink their teeth into, just because I was chewing the scenery, then okay, fine. But that also goes to, I like sandbox games. Yeah. I like that open world idea. I like it at the table, especially because my other experience is LARPing, and it's really hard to do open world LARPing. Yeah. Tabletop, you want to go to the next city? Sure, you can go to the next city. We don't have to create a new set.
Right.
For me, I think it kind of depends on the game itself. When I play mystery games, we played, what's the game? Mac ran it a few months ago. City
of Mists?
Yeah, City Mists. That's what it is. And I keep saying Sin City. I'm I know it's not that. It's a different thing. City Mists, that was a true detective noir. We're solving a crime. And I think it's okay in things like that to be okay, you're going to follow a clue, and maybe it doesn't lead anywhere. And I think that's an okay situation. I mean, you don't want them to do it, like Stork said, for session after session. But if you see them heading completely down the wrong path, have a informants or something, give them real information. But I think it's okay to have them hit dead ends sometimes, especially in a situation like that where a lot of people do kind of want that noir detective feel, where you might go the wrong place. I think if for high fantasy adventure stories like that, it's a little harder, because it's okay, we've spent 2 months traveling to this other town or whatever it is, and it's just kind of a little bit what we were saying, dead air. So I think just kind of measuring, knowing your players, for one, are they going to be pissed if you game once a month and they spend 2 sessions on something? That's a lot of emotional input for them, and that would piss me off. If you're gaming twice a week, that's a little less urgent. You might be okay with having a session or 2 where you went down the wrong path. Maybe give them carrot at the ends. Maybe, this was the wrong path, but hey, they found a clue that led them on the right path. Or hey, this wasn't the tower you were looking for, but there's some cool loot here anyway, and that might help you in your big boss fight or something like that. You can make it worthwhile.
We're sorry, Mario, your princess is in another castle.
Exactly.
Yeah, I do agree. I do agree that it is very much setting specific, because I remember Jib ran a game that was a murder mystery that I played in, and I was actually in the playtest. He ran it at the con later, And I watch a lot of police procedural shows, like too many. And so he gave me this pre-gen character who was a doctor and who was a friend of the deceased. And so we were all brought into the police department and said, you know, this guy has been found dead, suspicious circumstances. You're all connected to the victim. We want to talk to you. And then once they were done with us, and this was the intro to the game, he said, okay, well, what do each of you want to do? And I said, I want to go to the coroner. I want to go to the medical examiner and find out what the hell happened to my friend, because I'm a doctor and I would be able to understand what the coroner has to say. And Jib went, what?
I mean, I'm sorry. That seems like a pretty obvious. Like, not.
Well, yeah, but still, it was like, oh, yeah, no, that. But the red herring there wasn't something that he gave as like a detail somewhere in the setting that he described. It was a detail within my own character that was like, well, this is my hammer, and this is the nail that my world looks like. So. Yeah, no, it is very much setting specific.
Kimmy and Stu both brought up a really interesting distinction, which I didn't make. I was conflagrating the two together, which is there's actual red herrings, which are actual clues that lead someplace that is a dead end usually. That's the whole thing about a red herring. And then there's a clue that you hadn't planned on, or set dressing that got picked on, as you say, and that's a different thing in my mind. Having an actual red herring, the GM has set up a clue trail that leads you nowhere.
Yeah.
Right?
That's
And that could be shitty. But as you say, with investigations, oftentimes, you know, they have to track down every clue to at least to eliminate the ones that are wrong. But that's really endemic to investigation. If you're spending 3 or 4 sessions in a fantasy world trying to track down, you know, a guy that doesn't exist, you're going to be pissed unless at the end of the day there's at least a clue that says, you know, this didn't happen, this was wrong, but it leads you somewhere else. It has to be played very, very carefully. I think there's a difference between a red herring and then just the players pick up on a different clue and you're not flexible enough to allow information to flow from that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, the intent to actually fool them
is
like that's nobody likes that. Like, I mean, sometimes it's fun with like puzzles or something to be like, hey, like, oh, there's this trap, you have to figure out how to get out of it. But like actually like tricking your players to going the wrong way, it's like a little
Well,
I mean, it's interesting to maybe have a character who's trying to trick them, but there has to be a way for them to know that they're being tricked or something without just like one roll. Or like if they are tricked and they start to go down that path, just don't let it run for too long.
Yeah.
And they, like you said, like they're super different than very over proactive players picking up on one column in to the bottom of your prop newspaper. Like, I feel like that's like letting them have some slack on the leash for a little while with something like that is kind of fun.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, use your best judgment. Don't let it go for too long. But that's a very different. Like, we can laugh and joke about that now because it's like a funny story about us making a choice. Like, I can't see us all laughing and smiling and joking about Stu having like purposely fooled us into going down, you know, the path.
Yeah.
You know, that's not as endearing to me.
Still be mad at him.
What you're gonna go bear hunting?
Hopefully,
Okay.
what is a quick question is it reasonable to have an NPC who is an unreliable narrator?
Yeah.
As long as there's a way for the players to tell that they're an unreliable narrator.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
If you present them 100% as trustworthy and great, and there's not a role they can make, there's not a snitch they can talk to who can defute, they can like disparage them, things like that. If you give them no ways to know that person is a jerk and that they shouldn't trust them, and then you just like spring it on them, that's like a dick move. It's not clever. It's, you know, it's like, oh, okay, like you're omnipotent, of course, like of course everything's perfect for you. Of course you couldn't fool us into thinking this person was great. That's not an accomplishment.
No.
It's true.
Now, just another busy drone mentioned something that I thought was interesting. He said, a red herring, intentional misdirection. An intentional misdirection must either be carefully handled to serve the plot, i.e., the villain intentionally played it to throw them, or otherwise useful or productive. No one likes da-da-da-da. But the interesting, having a red herring that was actually, that's not, well, I guess it is set up by the GM, but it's actually set up by the NPC villain to like throw them off the trail. That I think is, he's right. I think that is fine, and it does serve the plot, and then that's just going to make them hate the guy even more.
Absolutely. That's totally different,
Yeah, he followed up on that with he says his rule with that is the GM should never lie to you, but NPCs might lie to your characters.
There you go.
That's a great differentiation.
Yeah.
And again, like there needs to be a way for them to see through that. There needs to be a way for them to figure out that this character or the big bad or whatever is dicking with them. It can be really difficult, but there needs to be some sort of way. Like you can't make it like the perfect thing where there's no possibility of them figuring it out. Right. They cannot figure it out, but it has to be because of the choices they make, not because it's impossible. You not wanting them to figure it out yet, so not letting them find out based on any roles or any actions they take, no matter what. You can't do that. That's lame.
No, that's getting into adversarial GM territory, and that's no cool.
Yeah. So.
You only do that if you're playing a con game and they figured everything out in the first 15 minutes. Which is fucking happened.
Spiders.
oh yeah, the giant mech spiders. Thank you, Steve and SoCal, for the email. We appreciate it. The next one is game commitment levels comparison from Scott. Who would like to read this?
You want to take this? I'll take the next one.
I'm not going to read anything. I'm fine.
Okay, I'll read it. Sure.
Okay.
All right.
Levels. Hello, Jack.
Wait.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I was going to make a smart comment about I spend 5 hours a day reading things to kids on Zoom. I really am fine not reading anything. Fine.
Hello, Jackers and siblings of another douche nozzle. Longtime listener, about 5 years now. First-time submitter. My question today pertains to gaming quotas and how much time yourself and your players are willing to commit to this hobby. Let me explain.
Oh dear.
I've been running games for 5 years now. I have run games for 3 different groups of friends, sometimes interspersing the players between. I've noticed that some groups of friends are much more available to play than others, both in length of session and with general scheduling. Let me explain. One group, let's call them Group Alpha, consists of a 5-player table, 6 including myself. Pinning down time to schedule has always been difficult with this group. The highest level of frequency I can manage to schedule has been no more than once a month. Sometimes the schedule will slip for much longer. With these gaps in gaming, you would expect that the Group Alpha would run sessions longer in an attempt to get the most of our time. Nope. The most I can get out of this group is 3.5 hours on a good day. Part of this may be due to the large size of the table, 5 players, limiting the spotlight, which I believe could cause the players extra exhaustion. Generally, I cannot get a good time commitment out of this group. My second group, let's call them Group Bravo, consists of 4 players, table 5, including myself. Pinning down time to schedule this group is much easier to navigate. We will play on a frequency of once every 2 weeks, with an occasional weekly game as well. Conversations scheduling the game are much more productive. In addition, this group could game for much longer sessions, up to 5 or 6 hours with ample breaks in between. In general, this group is much more willing to commit time. Drink!
Oh, okay.
This has led me to think about the differences between the 2 groups' willingness to commit time to gaming in general. There are a couple of factors that I am willing to consider outside of the personality traits. 1. Family life. Neither Alpha or Bravo group has children, no quarrels there. 2. Work habits. The Alpha group works steady 9 to 5, 40-hour work week. The Bravo group works a more chaotic week. One person is a bartender, the other works occasional weekends, another is on call often. One would expect that Alpha group would be easier to schedule due to the methodical nature of their schedules. Alas, they are not. 3. Location. The Alpha group all live within 2 miles of my house, where I host. The Bravo group lives all over the state. I live in Connecticut, each about 35 minutes away. Again, the opposite of what you might expect.
Now,
4.
Now,
Go ahead.
states on the East Coast, they're little, right?
Oh yeah.
So
That's
35,
tiny.
a
Yeah.
35-minute drive could be a big chunk of that state, yeah?
Connecticut is is smaller than the county of San Bernardino.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Smaller than San Bernardino County.
Got it.
So, yeah.
To be fair, San Bernardino is the largest county in the United States.
It's the largest county in the world.
To be fair. No, wait. Oh, yeah, okay, county, okay.
County.
Yeah.
4.
To be fair.
Willingness to play online. Due to COVID, we, like the rest of the country, were forced into playing online for the last 5 months. Bravo Group were all able to set themselves up on Discord with some headphones and a mic and continue gaming. We actually increased the frequency at which we were able to have a session to weekly for the first 2 months of the pandemic. The Alpha Group, on the other hand, had very little interest in playing online. We tried one session to a lackluster response. Between the technical difficulties and the different feel, the players simply had less fun and said they would only want to play in person once the pandemic is cooled off. 5. Enthusiasm. I believe I have an enthusiasm problem with Alpha Group.
Clearly.
They have independently stated they want to keep playing, but I am having trouble believing them. I am willing to scrap their existing campaign for a new one, but they are really attached to their characters in the world. I see no discernible difference in actual table enthusiasm when we play. Cheers for the critical successes, howls for the critical fumbles, and a lot of fun role play and banter in between. But maybe I'm missing something. Am I being unfair to Alpha Group? Am I looking into things that aren't there? Am I missing something staring me in the face? In addition, what about yourselves? What is your usual weekly time commitment to the hobby? What factors in your life have changed over time? I'm sure Kimmy has something relevant to say about this. Sorry for the 800-word email. I hope you have a safe, socially distant rest of your summer. Scotty Apollo on the forums.
Yeah, all these emails are from July. So we got kind of a backlog on emails right now.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I started running a weekly game online about 2 weeks after I was sent to work from home back in late March, early April. And I think we've missed 3 sessions. So I think that you are not being unfair to your Alpha Group. I think that that perhaps your Alpha Group is being unfair to you. And
I'm gonna take the opposite point there.
Well, okay. I'll
Go ahead. You finish your thing, and then
I will finish quickly.
Yeah.
And I think that there is definitely an enthusiasm problem with the Alpha Group, and seeing as how you have another group that seems to really enjoy the style of game you're running, because most GMs have a style that doesn't really vary much between game types or games. It sounds like there might be a bit of a mismatch in your Alpha Group. Now, this is my opinion. Apparently, Kimmy has a very different one, so I will leave the floor open to her.
Yeah. Well,
The
I
floor
definitely
recognizes
agree that
Kimmy.
there's an enthusiasm problem. But I do think that you need to give your Alpha Group a little bit of especially right now, a little bit of a pass. Like, speaking as someone who has my day job, and I'm on Zoom a lot more than a lot of people because I have to teach kids all day in Zoom. And honestly, as much as I love gaming groups. Like, the last thing I want to do is go spend 3 or 4 more hours in Zoom during my week. So I feel like you.
Thanks for coming on the show, Kimmy. I appreciate it.
I can't hear you. What?
Thanks for coming on the show tonight. I appreciate it.
It's okay. I mean, I miss it. Like, I miss the interaction. I miss the gaming. I miss all that stuff. But the minute I log in to do it, I just feel myself melting and like my soul draining away. And it's not about the GM at all. It's not about the content. It's not about any of that stuff. So at least for the more recent problem of people not wanting to game during COVID, it may be because you're people who have more office type jobs. Many of them may be having to do a bunch of Zoom meetings or online meetings all day since they're either working from home or working with people who are working from home.
That is definitely a possibility.
That's possible.
Yeah. So that's the one thing. And
it does sound like he was having these problems though before the pandemic started.
Yeah.
See, the thing. Go ahead.
No, go first, Jim.
I don't think there is a problem. I mean, the group that is harder to get to schedule together, that just sounds like a group of people who are just less enthusiastic about role-playing games. Because he says they have a grand time once the game gets going, but it's just like, you have priorities in life. It's like maybe Group A is like really into binge watching TV shows, and it's like, oh, I got a game. Oh, but I'm right in the middle of binge watching this, and I don't really want to interrupt it because I'm so close to the end. Who knows? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't even know if it's really a problem, because if they're enjoying the game, they're enjoying the game. But it may just be. I mean, everyone in this hobby has different levels of enthusiasm for the hobby at any given time. Even I'm got a podcast and run multiple games, but even my enthusiasm ebbs and flows, because like right now I'm binge watching what's it called, Blacklist.
Oh yeah.
With Robert California, or whatever that actor's name is.
James Spader.
James Spader. And
You're really close, Stu.
he played Robert California on The Office.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, this is really good. I could just sit and watch it. And it's a lot of seasons. And I'm like, this is so much fun. And I like James Spader. I think he's really funny.
He's a great actor.
He is.
I binged through about 4 seasons of that very quickly.
I guess there's like 8 or 9 or something like that.
I know, right?
There's a lot of them now. But I mean, and people's enthusiasm level just ebbs and flows through the hobby. And I don't think that's anything to really worry about. And it may just be coincidental that you have one group that just happens to be made up of people who are like really super interested in role-playing games, and another group is like, oh, it's a fun hobby, but I also do other stuff. I mean, everyone does other stuff, but it could just be that they're just like, eh. And I don't know.
Also, like, look at the personality types. I think that's the most important thing. Like, the people who are a bartender, are they really a bartender, or are they an actor who's a bartender to make their rent? And, like, are all these people who have these more freelance type jobs, are they more creative, like, more outgoing types versus the people who are having their office jobs? So that's something, too. Like, I mean, people who have office jobs can be amazing role players. It's not that they, but people who are already actors, who already have artistic pursuits as the main, like, avenue of their hobby. Like, I'm going to use you as an example, Stork. Stork is very theatrical, and for his living, like, he is a painter. He works on sets. He works on things like that. So, like, he has a very creative, hopefully sometimes creative job, depending on what you're painting that week. Yeah. Like, he's gone down a very creative, artistic, like, career for himself. And while someone in an office job may love role playing, but they may not have that same kind of theatrical bent.
To piggyback off of that, sometimes the people with a 9-to-5 job, the only time they have free after that is in the evenings or whatever it is, and they have other lives. They want to see their spouses, they want to see movies and such. So sometimes it's actually harder to schedule stuff when you have a life like that, because you've got other priorities that you are also vying for your limited amount of time, the 4 hours you have between the end of work and sleep.
Yeah.
And so it can be. I realize schedules and stuff happen, but also people have full lives. They have birthdays and weddings, and they get sick, whatever it is. And sometimes it's almost harder than the guy that's like, I don't have to be at work till 3. We can play whenever. Yeah, it's great. That guy, his schedule is open, and he's just more willing to pivot on it. The other thing I was thinking is sometimes just personality types, or even character types. We've got a bunch of sort of somber playing characters. Everybody's playing a necromancer, or everybody's sort of just, and the mood is different.
Mm-hmm.
So, and sometimes various players, not that they don't get along, but just the chemistry amongst them is different from game to game to game. And I've experienced that. There's been times where in certain games, the mood is just different. The energy is just different. And it has nothing to do with the game. It has to do with the players in that game at that time and their personalities.
Yeah, absolutely. And we see that here all the time. Like, we have a, amazing, like, a whole big group of players. We have people we play with at cons all the time who are, like, regulars in our games, or we have a GM that we always sign up for at a certain con, things like that. And game to game can be incredible. Like Kurt's played in a bunch of my con games, and like even though my GMing style, like you were saying, is very similar and very steady, I think every time, even though the actual adventure idea is very different, like based on the people at the table, like incredibly different vibes sometimes.
Oh yeah, very much so. I mean, you definitely do have a style. I like it. That's why I keep signing up for your games.
Thank you.
But yeah, the players at the table very much set the mood. Much the gestalt of the players at the table sets the mood much more than the GM.
And it sounds kind of woo-woo, you know, like, oh, you know, everybody's got this weird personal energy going on. But, like, even films do what they call chemistry tests.
Yeah.
And so they may have, like, 4 or 5
tests.
incredible actors, and they just put them together to see that chemistry. And it's that thing that happens that you can't bottle it, can't label it, they just call it chemistry.
Yeah.
And that's and when you have a table full of 5 people, there is a chemistry going on that just, you don't have to place a value on it, but the energy and the chemistry is different from table to table.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Game to game.
And
Absolutely.
when they ignore those tests, you get movies like Eyes Wide Shut and
Right.
what's the other one that was that really epic sci-fi one? Do you remember, Kimmy?
That one.
There was
Can you be
There was
a
a
little
there was a
royally bad
sci-fi
ones?
movie they spent
you
an
make that up
enormous
a bit?
amount of money on, and the special effects are fantastic, but it just fell flat.
Interstellar?
It's like 2 years,
Avatar.
3 years. Yeah, three. It's like 3 years old, maybe 4 years old.
Maybe Interstellar. I don't know.
It might be Interstellar.
Who's in it?
I don't remember. It was 2 people. One of the 2 main characters is like the daughter or son of one of the producers or something, which is the reason it was made in the first place.
Oh,
Well, that's
'Cause
not
you told me that
Interstellar,
story.
Anne Hathaway is.
yeah. No,
Oh, I can't remember.
It was Anne Hathaway, right?
I think we talked about this one time. That's why you asked.
It's not Jupiter. I don't think it's Jupiter Rising.
No, but it's like that.
This
one.
is
There was
but
another one
this
that
is
came
one
out
where
about
there's
the
like
same
an
time that was very
alternate
similar.
reality, like you go
City
through
of a
something.
Thousand Planets, Valerian.
Yes.
Valerian,
Yes,
that's
Valerian.
it. That's
Yes.
it.
Thank you to Erica Odd, who's
Yes.
in the chat, who came up with that one.
Of course, Erica, like you and I, like gather sometimes. Yes, Valerian, which is it was sad because I was really excited.
There was, I mean, they
That
spent
was,
a lot of
Cara
money on that.
Delevingne and somebody, right?
I don't remember, but if those 2 actors had, if you could believe that there was any romance interest between those 2 actors, it would have been a good movie.
They were both really great to look at. But wow. So for the second part of the question, how much time do you have to dedicate to this hobby every week?
I'm currently, like I said, I'm running a weekly game. Usually my games are fortnightly.
Mhm.
Usually when I run a game, because I need 2 weeks to prep, but I have nothing but time on my hands these days, outside of my 40 plus hour a week job. Yeah, I've been running a weekly game on Tuesdays, and then I am playing in another game on Sunday nights, also weekly, which would normally be fortnightly as well.
Yeah.
So,
I'm usually
and
just
I've already signed up for 2 more games.
I know personally, maybe speaking for the other people in this other group, the Alpha group, I know personally at the end of a long day, I'm wiped out,
Oh yeah.
and I'm not a 20-year-old anymore. I can't drive across town after working, a 10 to 12-hour day and game for 5 hours. I just don't have it in me, and so it's really only the weekends that I feel comfortable to being able to set aside, and because it takes some energy to do it.
Sure.
As fun as it is, even swimming or playing volleyball on the beach takes a lot of energy, and you have to set aside time to do it. But I'm pretty much still just weekends, even with the COVID going on. Everybody says you have time. It's like, well, I'm working, but yeah, when COVID was going on, I'm like, sure, I can turn on my computer and I'm here
Right.
anyway.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Scotty Apollo.
Apayo, I think.
Apayo? Scotty Apayo?
Apayo?
Scott?
I don't know.
Scott from Connecticut.
Not from Connecticut.
Thank you for the email. Bittersweet email from Erica Odd. Now, this is from
Okay.
July, because it says July 29, 2020, so I don't know if...
And Erica is in the chat, so
Yes.
we will ask about this. Dear Happy Jack's crew, I received bad news this morning, 7/29/20. The woman who introduced me, my brother, her 3 kids, and some of the neighborhood kids to Advanced Dungeons and Dragons way back in 1982 is in the hospital. She's in her early 70s now and has been in poor health for a while. Sadly, it isn't looking good. I'm sure that we can get an answer in the chat as to
Right.
If there's any update
yeah,
on
I
that.
mean, I don't know if she needs to necessarily.
Yeah, she probably doesn't want to tell us. But
do
anyway,
that in the chat right now. That's okay.
no, that's a good point. That's a very good point. Sorry, moving on. The first character I made was Valeria, named after the character in the Conan movie. She was a thief and had a charisma of 6. We started out in a tavern. Hey, back then it wasn't a cliche yet.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah. It's still a good way to introduce characters. Just, got to be good at it.
And the neighborhood tough guy and sometimes bully had his character start a fight with a big orange-skinned humanoid. Ogre? Orc? Hobgoblin? Who knew? We'd never played before. This resulted in our characters being thrown out into the night. We camped in the woods, and my character found a hidden chest. I failed to pick the lock and was attacked by a blood-sucking bird things I later learned were called sturgeons.
I was
fucking
gonna say
hate sturgeons.
Yeah.
Sturgeons. The mosquitoes
I
from hell.
remember them.
Yeah, that's what they are.
I nearly died.
From
I
Sturgis.
did manage to get the chest open, and inside was a key that opened a door to a strange underground dungeon. The rest, as they say, is history.
Oh,
It
it's
was
so
all
amazing.
so amazing to me, that first game. My head swam with the possibilities. Had that fight not started, had we not gotten thrown out, had I not found that key, everything would be different. There were a million ways the story could unfold, and it depended on what we did. I was hooked. And now my first DM, who got me started on my path, is in failing health. While sad, this email isn't meant to be a horror story, but a celebration. Huzzah. Of our hobby, our adventures, and of the friends we made, sometimes lost over the years. Of dice rolls, critical hits, magic, mystery, and of course, mayhem. Maybe share a story or two about your early gaming experiences. Pour one out for your old friends you don't see anymore, or can't for whatever reason. I know it's fun to rubberneck at the RPG horror stories, but that's not why we're in the hobby. It's not what keeps us here. It's telling a shared story, hanging out online or in person, with friends and loved ones, chucking dice, virtual or physical, and killing monsters. Never forget the good times and the good people in the hobby. Roll initiative. Erica Odd.
Erica, you're a great
Hurrah.
writer. That was a very
Absolutely,
well-crafted letter.
Yeah.
Thank you
Absolutely.
for that. Wow. Nice essay.
Absolutely. I think only Kimmy started gaming after I did, because I know Stu and Stork have been doing this since the 70s, and I'm not sure what century.
Fuck off.
You're really...
Sorry, easy joke. I didn't start gaming until after college. We almost got into a game, the game almost started in college, and then it fell apart before we had even created characters. So that just didn't happen, and so it wasn't until after I graduated college that I got invited into the first game, which, for those who know me, won't be surprised that it was a Vampire the Masquerade Sabbat game. And yeah, I was pretty much hooked from that point.
That was a gateway for a lot of people in the 90s, I think. This
Yeah.
Vampire.
Yeah, it was very prolific in the 90s. It was the new hotness, and this was in 2004 that I got into it. So, yeah, actually, there was a group of friends that I met through that I only knew one of the people, the guy who sort of led me in. I still occasionally keep in touch with them to this day, except for one of them, who unfortunately did pass away about, now like 15 years ago. From a brain tumor. So, he was a good guy and got to meet a lot of good people through that group. So, I met my wife through game.
Yeah.
I did, seriously, because that same guy who got me into that game, I went to his wedding, and he met his girlfriend, now wife, at Dragon Con in a vampire LARP. Dragon Con is in Atlanta. They both lived out in LA at the time, but they met at Dragon Con and started dating, got married. I go to their wedding, and I meet my wife at the wedding. So we bonded over tabletop gaming stories.
Going to a wedding is the making of another.
Exactly right. So
It's often been said, or I've often been said, yeah.
What if I have that on the
I
thing?
back in the heady days when I was doing it, we had this group of just 3 or 4 people, and I mentioned this I think last time I was on too, but for a while it seemed like every 6 months or every year another new game system was dropping, whether RuneQuest or Dragon Quest or there were all these systems that kept coming out. There's Champions dropped, and
Like now.
well, but it was completely radically different systems. You know,
Yeah.
we had Chivalry and Sorcery on one side, and we had D&D, and then we had Gamma World, and so all of these different games. Boot Hill was out, so all these different games. And so we were like, it was like a smorgasbord, a sampler plate. We would, well, let's try this, and so we'd go buy the game and learn the rules vaguely and try it out. Let's try this, and so we were like playing every week, and sometimes we had multiple games going with multiple GMs. And sometimes we'd be like, well, I don't want to jam today. I don't have everything ready, so that somebody else would launch into their other game. And we were just so addicted and had so much fun gaming in whatever that I just sort of missed that, you know. And my brain was flexible enough that I could keep the rules from Stormbringer and the rules for RuneQuest separate in my brain. Now I'm like, oh, is this the game with all the 6-sided dice, or I've forgotten, do we count, or is it added? Yeah. So I kind of miss those heady days where everything was new, you know.
Yeah.
And your letter kind of reminded me of that, which is, you know, remember when you first played D&D and they described a monster to you and you didn't know what it was. You're like, I didn't know what an ogre was. I didn't know what an orc was. And now they start describing, oh, it's an orc. Okay, all right, got it. Oh, no, it's a troll. We got to burn it.
Yeah.
But back then, everything was new, and I miss those days of just absolute discovery, and, you know, like, oh my God, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, I literally, the first time I played D&D was literally in a friend's basement, and his parents had turned it into a rumpus room, I guess they called it in the 70s. It was 1978, and we spent the day. It was a weekend, and me and my best friend from across the street went over to this guy's house, and we played he had some miniature game, and he had a bunch of minis that he had painted, and we played that for a little while. Did a couple other things, and he's like, "Oh, I got this." And he brought out the red box edition of D&D, and we played it, and just like she said, I was freaking hooked right away. As soon as you realize, it's like, wait, I can do whatever I want, and then there's a person there who's going to take that into account, and oh my God, this is going to be freaking amazing.
I don't actually remember what my first D&D game was. I think it was just me and another guy that we were just trying out chainmail or like the red box. But I do remember a point where there was the brothers down the street. There was an older brother who was 2 years older than us, and he was, you know, amazing. And these guys were really smart. I mean, they all went off to become scientists and mathematicians. That's just the way these people were. But when his older brother decided to run a game for us, I felt like I had arrived, right? Because he was like the guy that was super smart and knew games, and I feel like, and he treated us all like equals, and that was like, I think that's a game I remember, and that's a moment when I felt like, all right, okay, I can do this now, all right. Because up until that point, you're just reading the rule book and sort of playing with friends, and, you know, and I don't know if it was like professional gaming, but I kind of felt like suddenly, oh, we're all gamers. We're not just, oh, he's a better gamer than we are because he's older and has played longer. Okay, I remember that moment.
Yeah, I think for me, I tried to play in junior high, and we didn't even make it through part of a session. We kind of started to make characters, and then we got distracted by video games. And I've talked about that a lot. I think the moment that really grabbed me though was when I really started to play tabletop games with Stu's first Eldemy game, and I was playing that Raven Queen character. But they hadn't dropped any of the Raven Queen stuff yet. So it was just there's a thing called the Raven Queen. And I was like, oh, that's cool. Sitting and writing and creating my own lore for that was just that was so much fun. And I hadn't done that in a long time. I had I'd done that with my role playing in video games, which is sort of similar to a LARP, but you're in a computer instead. But having that freedom to do that and then sit at a table with my friends and eat snacks the whole time, was just this great mixture of two things that I really loved that had never before merged for me. Before it had always been friends, and these people were my best friends, but I had no idea who they were really. So there was always that oh, you log off and it's over. like for the first time I had this group of friends who were my like really good friends that I had been doing fair with for years.
Did you just freeze?
She did.
She totally froze.
At least she didn't freeze in some really awful look.
Fist to the sky, fist to the ground.
On the ground.
Am I back? Am I back?
Almost.
Almost. We sort of hear you a little.
Okay. Where
Oh,
did
there you are. You're kind of coming
Okay.
back now.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
it's on-
you're
I
there.
think it's on Kimmy's end.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
it's my end. Sorry. Like the internet or the air conditioning just kicked off. It's been like 107 here all week with
Yeah.
everybody. Sorry. So where did I freeze? I felt like I was on like a roll.
How your gaming friends and your real world friends merged.
Yeah. So like suddenly I was able to, the friends that I hung out with and that like we did fair with and things like that, I was able to suddenly meld that with this world creation that I'd always really enjoyed, and then also snacks and beer. But that was the, like kind of the moment, like creating that character. And it's interesting because I think if I'd played, I'm not sure it would have happened as powerfully if I'd picked something in D&D that was so fleshed out that I didn't have to create it on my own.
Mhm.
I think me sitting and writing all that stuff and making up my whole lore of the Raven Queen, which ended up being much better than what they came up with. Sorry, I'm bitter. Like I feel like that really was like the thing that really sparked my interest and like made it like a long form hobby that I stuck with.
You know, it's funny. That's one of the things I loved most about playing Champions, the superhero games, because you got to spend a huge amount of time on that guy's backstory, how they came up with their powers, how they built their suit, you know, the relationships outside of their superhero identity, and that was, you're right. That's a lot of fun coming up with all that backstory.
Yeah.
You know, usually in D&D you're a level 1 character, maybe level 4 or something. You don't have much experience yet.
Yeah.
You know, but the superhero game, you're kind of
Yeah.
there's this stuff already attached to you that you
Yeah.
have to figure out why you
Well,
have it.
And there's like a whole world I think that's one of the reasons I've never really like been interested in playing games in like Waterdeep or things like that, like because there's so much like already there. Like I'm much more interested in creating a world, and it might be very similar to Waterdeep, but it's a world that is created for us,
Right.
which I think is really cool.
Kimmy just described briefly, but I don't know if Stu or Stork, if you remember the first character you played,
No, it was a fighter. I had no idea.
or maybe the earliest character you can remember.
Fuck.
Yeah, it's funny. I found like my old notebook, my old spiral notebook. I have a bunch of characters in there. It's funny because when you look at the character, you're like, oh yeah, but I think I can remember like the first time we sat down to play D&D, and it was a lot of looking through the rule books, and I don't really remember what the character's name was. He might have been a halfling. Because at that point, Lord of the Rings was still very strong in my consciousness. So
Right.
every
and
game was a quest for some sort of thing.
Love that.
To even remember, fuck, I don't remember any of the early stuff. It wasn't until like post college that I even remember my characters. And I don't even know which came first, but I had one that I played a bard. It was basically me. A big fat guy who was a bard, and we were in a fight. We were playing GURPS. Bill was GMing, and I fell.
Is it the one where you played the mandolin or just noodled around?
Yeah, I
it
noodled around on the
table?
mandolin until
Yeah.
someone took it away from me, and and my character died because he was fat. He was a big fat guy, and he fell off we were trying to help these elves defend their territory, and they had everything was built in the trees, like little walkways and shit. And I'm on a walkway, and I'm like, oh fuck, someone's shooting arrows at me, and I'm big. Oh damn! And I'm trying to get out of the way, and I critically failed a dodge roll. So he figured, well, yeah, you probably fell off the ladder. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna fall off the ladder. He's like, I'm gonna give you one more roll to maybe just grab onto something and hold onto something until someone can help you. I'm like, okay, and I critically failed that roll too. And then I fell, and then we figured, because it's GURPS, we figured, well, it's this much distance. Boom. Oh yeah, I died. And then the other character, and I don't remember which.
You never told me how he died. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was 2 critical failures and dodged getting shot by arrows.
That's rough.
Fell out of a tree.
That is
Falling
better
out of
than
it.
how my first character died. So
And then I had another character who was well, he was called Highlander, and it was a brick in Champions. And he ended up. He died? No, a character before him. The first character in that was Oppenheimer, who was the guy who was like the real dark vigilante guy, and had to retire the character because they're like the party's like, there's no way these two people would ever work together.
That was Oppenheimer. I think was the character you brought back for the hero game. I guess it was Champions.
Yeah.
That you and Bill ran,
and we
at a
never
con,
got to him.
And we didn't get to him because it was it was a con game, and it was a bit much. But
Yeah.
I would have loved to continue that game because that was in it.
Yeah, it's shit. It just fell out of my head. I was going to say something.
Oh well.
Oh yeah, because I had a big long hiatus before I started gaming again. It was like more than a decade. And when I went out and I bought the 4th edition D&D books, and I start talking to people at fair, and I'm like, hey, yeah, suddenly all these, because I don't think like Stork and I, we at this point we'd already known each other probably 20 years, right?
Yeah.
Close to it. And I don't think we'd ever really talked about role-playing games.
We sort of talked about it wistfully or even mockingly, like
maybe. I don't even remember having any conversations about role-playing games back then. We're sitting around drinking beers and like, she's pretty.
I gave you that book, and then you started a game or something, and I think I actually asked you, I'm like, how come you didn't invite me to the game? And you went, I didn't think you wanted to.
No, because I think you were in the first session when we did the Eldemy thing. Because the Eldemy thing, I think, was the first thing I ran in fourth ed. But it was like, suddenly, even people in my own band, I didn't even know that they had ever played role-playing games before.
Yeah.
And you were in a Renaissance fair band full of geeks, nerds, and trolls who had for a very long time dressed up in funny clothes to sing bawdy songs at people for money.
And it never occurred to me they played role-playing games.
And it never occurred to you that they might be gaming nerds.
Nope. Not once. Not once.
We had been out of the hobby for so long that we didn't even realize the hobby was still going. It was one of these things where it was like, I wouldn't even know where to go, and we're old. Nobody old games, and we were like, and then once we started looking around, like, oh, there's whole, and then it just so happens that about the time Stu and I started gaming again, the hobby exploded again.
Yeah.
Right.
We just happened to catch that wave at the right time.
Yeah.
But
it was 4th E. Like 4th E was designed to bring people in from video gaming.
Yep.
Well,
and it did that very well.
But even talking to Tappy, Vampire was going gangbusters, but it just was not on our radar. I had not picked up on that.
So to be fair, when you guys started gaming, even when I started gaming, you didn't talk about being a gamer, like, in public. It wasn't a thing you advertised.
No, it's very true.
By the time I was in college, we certainly did. But in high school, no. You got stuff in the locker back then.
You still, even nowadays at work, I don't bring it up unless I know that they kind of understand. Because, there's still a stigma attached to it.
You a college boy?
I think less so now, but because of the success of the public success of streamed games, not just role-playing games, but also esports and things like that I think has shifted the window of public opinion just a little bit.
Yeah.
Video games helped a lot. Plus, Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones just pretty much inoculated everyone to fantasy. They all did it now.
And then you get like Stranger Things, where
and Ready Player One, the novel at least.
Yeah,
it kind of ignores the existence of role-playing games in the movie, but the Tomb of Horrors. It's awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
There was a good 20-year period where we just didn't. It just wasn't even looked at. We were like, was a period in our life that's over with.
Well, thank you to Felicia Day and all the people who came after her for bringing that out of the shadows, I guess.
Because I didn't. The last time I played was probably early to mid '90s, and when did I pick up the 4th edition books? 2009, January
Sounds about
2009,
right.
or maybe
After college, I didn't game at all. So 86 or 87 was the last time I'd rolled any dice.
So, quick question: which came first, the Eldemy game or the Ghostbusters in LA?
Ghostbusters came first.
Eldemy.
Eldemy.
No.
Eldemy came way first.
Ghostbusters was the first game that we
Streamed.
recorded as an AP.
Right,
That
okay,
was like
yeah.
2 or 3 years after we started
Okay.
playing.
It might have been longer than that.
Yeah,
Okay.
it wasn't for a while because I think that one's 7 years old. You got you got the books. You started doing the podcast because I wasn't on the podcast at first.
I thought we
Then you
started
started
playing.
the
I thought we
Eldemy
started
game.
playing first.
Did you? Because I was in the game, but I wasn't in the podcast. You just didn't want me in the podcast.
I don't remember. I have no idea. I remember talking about wanting to start the podcast in like June or July, but I thought we had started playing Eldemy before then. Maybe we didn't. I don't remember.
know.
It's not recorded, so there's no way I can really
Yeah.
reenact it to figure it
The
out.
only thing I remember is for in terms of timing it is I remember listening to the Angry Folk Music and Infantile Comedy podcast, and you announced on that you were starting a gaming podcast.
Right.
That's how I found out about Happy Jacks.
The only markers I have, and I think you were right, Kimmy. It did happen later, and Stu, is that in the Ghostbusters game, we'd already met Dave and Rob.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or-
Yeah, the
and
Ghostbusters
we
game
would not
was
have
much
met
later.
them if the podcast had not already been going.
That's a very good point.
Yes,
Yeah.
Okay.
absolutely. All right. I guess that's it. I'm going to go ahead and play us out.
All right. Yay! I made a thing. That's exciting.
You made a lot of things. You made a lot. That's
Thank
you're
you
a
for
maker.
sorry. Thank you for joining us for season 27, episode 12 of Happy Jack's RPG Podcast. My name is Stu.
My name's Kimmy.
And I'm Kurt.
And we know. How long have we been doing this remote? And I've only remembered once to say, let's figure out what order we're going to introduce ourselves in. I've only remembered to do that once. And we've been doing this, 6 months, 7 months, 8 months? We've been doing this remote now? Yeah.
Listen, I'm just a hired hand.
It's been 5 months.
March, April, May, June, July, August. It's this
September.
many.
We didn't
September.
start all the way in March, though. We didn't start until
Yeah,
like
we
the end
did.
of March.
I was super scared. Don't you remember? I was saying I don't want people to come over to my house anymore. You don't remember all that? I was
I
canceling gigs at bars for the band and all kinds of stuff.
I just measure everything from like the birth of my daughter, which was 5 months ago.
Oh, okay. No, because I remember it's like
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, okay, you're right.
We
It
were
was
sp-
that. Yeah,
we were
because
supposed
it was right after St. Patrick's Day that we
Yep.
stopped.
No, it was-
much.
I think didn't we cancel our St. Patrick's Day game?
You did. Yeah, that's when everything started canceling. Is St. Patrick's Day?
Right,
It's
because
like
I remember
end of-
because we were supposed to go do something for
This is super
a
interesting
brew.
podcasting, by the way.
I know.
We
well,
didn't talk about this.
I know. Well, let me just finish. And I thought we were supposed to do something at a brewery in Azusa.
Yeah,
I don't think that was. I don't think that was
You
St.
had a
Pat's.
whole
though.
St. Patrick's Day show set up for your band, and then you had to cancel.
That's right, we did, and they were super pissed at
Yeah.
us. That wasn't there; it was at Callahan's, and they were like, "Oh, come on!" And like, I don't want to be in a little room with like
Nope.
250 people right now.
It's like
'cause-
you were right.
We were
I was
never
right.
happier to not have a St. Patty's Day gig because we didn't have to cancel it.
right. Well,
All
I
right.
mean, everyone kind of figured
Let's
out. Oh, I guess we have to.
And with
Bye.
the Russian national anthem.
Okay. That's it. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.